Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Gittin daf Yud Zayin. We're going to begin on Yud Zayin with Aleph by the two dots about 8 lines from the top. Echad oimer befane nechtav. If one person says that it was written in front of me, Ushnaim oimer befaneinu nechtam, and you have two people say that it was signed, so then everyone holds it's kosher. Some Rabbi Ami, so he says oimer Rabbi Yochanan lo shanu. The only time we say that it's kosher is el shaget yotzim mitachas yad a ksiva, where the get is in the hands of the one who testifies regarding the writing of the get, namely that he's the shliach. Denasu kishnayim al zeh, because it's considered because of the kanas chachamim that he's believed like two, referring to b'fanei nachtav. Kishnayim al zeh, and you have two people who testify on the b'faneinu nechtam. Avo metachas hidei edi chasima apostle. But if, let's say, the shluchim were the people who testified only on the chasimus, no, because this one person doesn't have the ability to testify alone on the ksiva. So al miksaver shtaim sheviu get mibdinas yam must be proof, as we discussed yesterday, as a machlokas. If two people, not one, but two people come as shluchim, srichin shemer fanenu nechtam fanenu nechtam, it's necessary that it must be said, which is like the opinion of Rabbi, that there is an issue still of lishma, even though there's two people there. Amalei Rav Asi El Miyata Reisha Tani said, Shnaim Omer b'fanenu nechtam. You have two people said that I saw it written. Ve'echad Omer b'fanenu nechtam. However, only one person says referring that it's b'fanei nechtam was in front of it was signed. So possibly you had a machshir. There is a machlokas. You feel get yoytz mitachas zedei shneim passer rabbanon. Now the fact that the rabbanon say it's possible, apparently that means even in a situation where both of these people are the shluchim. So Amalei he says yes. So he says yes, it's true. So Zimnin another time, Rashi says, Ashched Yosef v'Koyim v'Defil get yotz matachas yedei eid chasima kosher. That even if the get is in the hands of the eid chasima, not that the chachamim would hold it's not good, but rather kosher. Alma, because they hold ksavar shtam sheviu get mibdinas yam ein srichin shema fanenu nechtam ufanenu nechtam, which would be like they according to the sheet of Rava, as the whole issue is only due to Eidim Summa Kaimo, but here we have two Eidim, so therefore it's not necessary to be said, and therefore it's going to say it's kosher in that case. Two people said that it was written in front of us. Only one person says it was signed, so possibly so time to get it's only because those two people were in shluchim. If let's say you're telling me that the get was by both of them, machshir rabbanon, because you hold that you don't even need to say but it was elsewhere it was not said like that. So this is like a strong peg that should not be moved. So if we look at Rashi, Lashon Acharon Ze'emes. This last Lashon is the truth, which is that if two people come from Dinas Yam, they do not need to say b'fanei nechtam and nechtam, and therefore the Rabbanon would be machshir even in that case. Let's look at question 7. Al eza halacha mehilchos Gittin amr b'gemar yased he shalotamoy. It's a peg that should not be moved. Get me, as we said, get yotz mitachas yad shnayim. If there was a get from two that they brought it from Dinas Yam, they do not need to say b'fanei nechtam. So that is what it's referring to. Okay, let's see the next Mishnah. Masnisa nichtam b'yoyim v'nechtam b'yoyim. Let's say the get was written and signed on the same day, or for that matter, B'layel v'nechtam b'layel was written and signed on the same night, or B'layel v'nechtam b'yoyim kosher. Even if it was written at night, but then during the day it was signed, it's kosher, says Rashi, because that's considered to be one day. We know here boiker. So therefore, even if you started at night, the next morning is still the same halachic day, and therefore it's not an issue regarding this get. However, b'yoyim v'nechtam b'layel apostle, according to the sheet of the Tanakama, that if you would have written the get during the day and then you signed it at night, that becomes a problem, because as Rashi says, it's considered to be a mukdam, that when it was written and it was signed were on two separate days, and therefore there's a problem because it needs to be written and signed on the same day. Otherwise, it's called a shtar mukdam. Rav Shimon Machsher, however, Shimon disagrees with this. Shahir Shimon Omer kol Gittin shenichtav b'yayim v'nechtam b'layla. When it comes to normal documents you write, they are psulin chutz min Gittin nashim. For whatever reason, he holds that it's okay here. Now, why normally is it a problem? So Rashi says, Yasel mitter v'kuchos miyayim deksiva ushlo kedin. Because the day that it's written, and it has, let's say, the date, let's say January 1st, obviously it's in Hebrew, but let's say that's the date that was written, it has that date, but then it's not signed, let's skip a whole bunch of months, to June 1st. That's when it's signed. Now, people are going, so that it's by the signature is when the get is actually, this document is valid. What happens if there was any transactions that took place in between? Is there going to be a lien on those properties? So in this situation, you may end up collecting incorrectly because people are going to end up thinking that the transaction actually took place all the way in January. And therefore, if let's say there was some type of purchase of land in March in the middle, that you would think that there's a lien on it, right? Because you purchased it after this document, after this loan. So there should be a lien on this property. But it shouldn't be because it wasn't signed until afterwards. That's the problem. So normally when it comes to a document, it's an issue because it's a shtar mukdam. However, chutz min Gittin nashim, he doesn't feel it's an issue because obviously by a get, there's no monetary collection. So therefore, even if it's written and signed on different days, it doesn't matter according to him. Says the Gemara, Itmar. So what is the purpose of having the zman, the time on a get? Even after all we said, you're not collecting any money, so what's the point of writing a date? So the Gemara provides two answers. The issue is with your niece. What does that mean? It says Rashi, she also happens to be your wife. V'shema tizne tachtav. Let's say she committed adultery, and because of that, you don't want to have anything to do with her anymore. However, you don't want her to get killed. You don't want her to get sentenced to death, to be strangled. The kaisa will get below zman, so you do is you write a get without any time on it. The nice and give it to her. When she goes to get sent to court, she'll prove out her get. The Omer's grusha, you see, says I didn't commit adultery. I was already divorced because there's no upanuya ba'oisasha, and I was single at the time. So therefore, she won't be punished because a panuya, it's not. There's no chiyuv misa for a panuya to have relations with some guy, but nation is a whole other matter. So he may have had compassion on his wife that he's divorcing. So that's the reason why we want him to write a get so that no one could do this. That's one opinion. Because of fruit. What does that mean? So Rashi says, Shemizman haget ve'elech, because even though it's true, the get itself, there is no mention of money, but from the time that the get is given and onward, im yoicher habal haperes b'nichs milug, let's say she has nichsi milug, and let's say the husband sells those fruits, which are hers, tigvim, they can be collected. V'im lo hoya bozman, but if there's no time on the get, he'll sell it. When they go to court, have yad al tachtaina, she'll have the bottom hand. Shiyermula, he'll say to her, kodim gershin macharti. No, I sold all these fruits before we got divorced. So the get needs to have his man, because the Baal can't sell her peros after the get, after he gave it. But with no date on the get, he can sell it now, and that'll be it. But now there's a date, he won't be able to do this. Okay. So he's talking about Tabel Lemer Krav Yochanan. Why didn't he like the reason of Basa Chaisai? So Amalach, so he says, we continue at Zayin Amanav, Yuzan Meves, the whole issue is because of your wife being Mazana, Znus lo shchicha. Can you imagine in the year 2023 to say this shot? Znus is not shchiach. And therefore, says Rashi, lo chashuv rabbanan. That's not a reason to put zman on a get, because the fact that people are going to be mazana, that's not something which is common. Rabbi Yochanan, my time Krish Lakish. Why does he mention the thing about peros? Ksavar yeshul bal peros ad shas nesina, because Actually, the husband does have rights to the get, to the peros, all the way up until the time in which it is given, says Rashi Hilkach. Zman ksivas get, the time of writing the get, lo mahani mean, it doesn't help anyway if you wrote the date. Tachi asil mitrav boile sui sahadi amos mata gitul yada. You still have to prove when the get got into her hands. So even if the get has a date, it says the 1st of Kislev, but maybe he didn't actually physically give it. So fine, it has to be written and signed on the same day. Doesn't mean you have to give it on the same day. So therefore, maybe he gave it a month later. So in between is when he sold these fruits, which he was still allowed to have rights to those fruits until B'Shas Nesina. So this is, again, the question 8 and elsewhere. Bala megarsh ishto ad matai ochel peros nechsim alug. So according to one opinion, according to Rabbanon, according to Rav Yochanan, it's ad shas nesina. However, according to Reish Lakish, he holds ad shas chasimas aget. He holds it's the time of signing the get, and that's the reason why the zman will help. Okay, so that's why there's this dispute. Now, Bishlam Reish Lakish Mishum Hachi Kamash Rav Shimon. I can understand the sheet of Reish Lakish. Again, Reish Lakish said the reason is because of peros. So he said, okay, fine. So now I can understand why Rav Shimon is Machshir. Because according to Rav Shimon, he'll just make a distinction as to when he has no rights to peros. Says Rashi, beget mukdam ksav Rav Shimon kivan shanasan in lagarsha. And as soon as you set your eyes to divorce your wife, shuv in lo peros. You have no fruit, rights to the fruit at all. Hilkach im asila mitra v'kuchos the peros miyom ksiva shapra abda. If, let's say, people come to say, to claim the fruits, from the time it was written, you did well. The time the Rabbanon will come in Mafarsh. El Rav Yochanan says, my time, the Rav Shimon Kamaksher. Why, according to Rav Yochanan, would he say that it's fine? Because if it's Ad Shas Nesina, according to him, that a person is, he's still married, she's still married, so he has a right to be able to give and to sell these fruits. So Rav Yochanan Rav Shimon lo kamina. According to Rav Shimon, I'm not talking about ki kamina libed Rabbanan, because you're right. It says Rashi to Rav Shimon vade zman lav mishum basachoso iskin el mishum peros. So he says it has to be because of peros. A libed Rabbanan the mishum hachi pasur Rabbanan the kosari zman mishum basachosoi. Ki kamina libed Rabbanan. Now Bishlam Rav Yochanan, who mentions the issue is because of znus. That's how there could be a difference between the two. So peri the the right to the fruits between the time it was written and time it was signed is there a difference, says Rashi. Taima the puktayu b'hachi Rabbanan possibly get muktam. The reason why the Rabbanan say a get muktam is problematic is mishum basachayis Shimon kosher. Why? Diksaver man mishum peros iskin. Hilkach, therefore, if the whole issue is peros, get mukdam kosher. The tarfa mishas ksiva, because if they come and collect it from the time it was written, shaper tarpa da nasan evla garsha, because he had the intention to divorce her. Fine. Ad shas chasim l'rabbanan lo boy l'mitraf el mechasim of elach. She gets it back in the time of the signature. Hilkach mukdam posel the chimafka le'asil mitrav miyam ksiva, from the day of it's written. Okay. So we heard the opposite. When does he no longer have a right to the fruits and she gets them? So we see the opposite. Okay, fine. April, you're right, so you have to flip it around. There's 3 situations in which the get is possible, says Rashi. In one of them, there's witnesses. We're going to see there's no time. Utanan, as we're going to see, we learn im nises that if they get married based on this avad kosher kivan di avid shaperdami that like b'diavad it works. So gimel gittin psulan im nises avad kosher. So if that's the case, mahil chachamim b'dekantan. What exactly is the benefit? Whether it's because of basachos or peros, if b'diavad it works anyway. So ahanu, it helps the l'chatchilo tenase. That at least l'chatchilo we don't want this to take place. Says Rashi. Lo kosvu le sefer hadayanim. The scribes are not going to write this. Lo chasmi le sahadi, and witnesses will not sign it. Fine. Gazil was mandi day. Will tear it off. Was mandi day v'yoiv nihile mai. So what happens if he writes it with a get with a zman, and then we'll rip off that part, so this tikkun is also worthless, right? You can just simply rip it off. We're not concerned that someone is going to do this. Shvua, Shana, Chodesh, Shabbos, Mai. So let's say you didn't write the entire thing. You didn't write the date, the actual day and month, but you wrote at least the week, the year, the month. The Shvua is referring to like the 7-year Shemitah cycle. So at least you mentioned something on the get, but you didn't specify to the day. So Amalei kosher, it's still good. So again, how does that help? How does this takan of Zman? It's not really a Zman if you write the year, right? So something could have been problematic during that time. So at least it helps for that amount of time. So it's not like you can come and collect it 30 years later. Okay. Because if you don't say that, you can technically split hairs and say, how do you know if the get was given in the day, in the morning, or in the afternoon? It's still the same day, and therefore maybe in the interim is when he sold peros. If you write the day, it explains the days before and afterwards. So as long as you do something, that would be apparently sufficient. Let's say you wrote the get properly. The oisve, as we continue to Yud Chesam and Aleph. The oisve bekiste, and he's holding it in his pocket. For Rashi says Yomim Rabim, for a long period of time. Dei mefaisa tifayes, that if, let's say, he feels appeased, he'll be appeased, and maybe he won't give the get, he won't divorce her with this. So what's the din? Says Rashi, Mechi mata gita liyada hude garsha. Do we say that from the moment that it goes into her hands, only then is she megarish? So Amalei lo makdim inish paranusa lenafshe. A person is not going to just be walking around with this get all this time. Lo regili, says Rashi, l'shevad hach. A person's not going to do this. Lanuche bekiste, to keep a get in their pocket. The givando nichale begershin. The person doesn't want to get divorced. Paranyaisul gabe. It's like a bad thing. V'lo makdim le. A person's not going to write it in that way. So you're not going to really be concerned that someone would do such a thing. Armale Ravino Ravashi Gittin Haboyim Medinas Hayom. If you have Gittin that come from another country, Demikasvim Nisan, that it's written in Nisan, Velo Matu Ad Tishrei, but it didn't get to you until Tishrei because it takes time. Again, how does that help? Hanu Kol Islahu. When it comes to these things, there will be a kol. Says Rashi, Ubein Le'inyan Znos, Ubein Le'inyan Peros, Boya Le'asui Rama. So it's going to be, there'll be information about this. Taisa says Perish Kuntris Deboy Sui Raya Amos Motagito Yada. They actually have to bring a proof when they got there. Ayin Taisus. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's see a couple more questions. So Baal Hamagarsh Ishto. So he said Amate Oichel Paris Nixim Malug. So again, according to Rav Shimon, as soon as he has the idea in his eyes to divorce her, which also is referring to Mishas Ksiva, even at the time it's written. According to the Rabbanon, the Machlokas Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish, Rav Yochanan holds Ad Shas Nesina, when it's actually given. Rish Lakish says at the time of the signing of the get. Okay, TA 15. Nichta b'yoyim nechta b'layla, Pasuk Rishon ben Machshir. So, question is, what exactly is the basis machlokas? So Reish Lakish pligi, Reish Lakish argues, and is labal peiros. Does the husband have right to the fruits ad shas ksiva, and the time it's written, or ad shas chasima, only at the time that it's signed, and therefore that will be the question of whether or not there'll be an Isha Peros if he would have sold it in between that time. Or Rav Yochanan playing eat time in the Mizman Mishum Dachashin Shema Yechapeh or Mishum Peros. Fine, which again has to do with showing Rachmanos. Let's see. Okay. TB 16. Hamigarish says Ishto on Masay Oichel Habal Peros Nechsim Malug Gimel Shitas B'Shas Shuhu Roit Sol Garish Ba, which is Shas Ksiva, B'Shas Ksiva Saget, B'Shas Nesina Saget. Adkan.